Choosing Home by ginnyrules27, Chapter 31. Claudine's heart raced as she drove towards the aisle, thankful for the foresight to have grabbed a remote to open the barrier in the first place. Normally, she'd never run from a fight, especially not from her brother. She was the faster drawer, after all, when it came to firing off a dagger. Plus, Henry had trained her on swords while she had been with the rats, and Jay, Harry, Harriet and CJ had all worked with her to train while in Oregon. There was no way for Freddie to get the drop on her. But this was different. He was different. Or maybe he was the same as he had always been, and she only now saw him for who he was. But Claudine knew that there was likely only one reason for Phil to text her something that vague and not respond. Freddie was looking for her. The last words Freddie had ever told her rang through her head as she continued to drive to the aisle. "You're dead, Claudine." And Freddie was not the type to say something and not act on it. "Thank God I'm a VK and could sneak past my roommate," she thought as she parked the car, having arrived on the aisle. "Macy's great, but she can sleep like the dead. I'll stay on the aisle until I get word that Freddie's been caught, and that it's safe to return. I hate doing this to Philip and Aurora, but it's the only thing I can do. The aisle doesn't have cell coverage after all." King Ben had tried to get cell coverage for the aisle, but in his defense, he had so much on his plate that cell coverage seemed ridiculous in the scheme of things. Quickly covering her car so that it couldn't be found and stolen, or worse, Claudine makes sure she has the remote to open the barrier, along with her sword, and made her way through the pipe to Pirate Cove. Taking a deep breath, she smiled as she took in the smell of salt water and fish. She didn't think it'd be something she would have missed in Oregon, but it was, along with a slightly wooden scent that almost seemed to be a part of Henry. Wood and steel and salt, with a hint of seaweed. A small smile came to her lips as she saw Henry on the deck of the Lost Revenge. He must be on watch. Oh, gods, he looks miserable. Or at least very mopey. Did he hear about Freddie being in Oregon that quickly? Well, no matter. Let's see if we can't cheer him up. Without taking another second to think about it, Claudine ran up the gangplank and into Henry's arms. "We've got to stop meeting like this," she said with a chuckle.
"What the? Claudine? Gods, you're so lucky I didn't stab you!"
Henry exclaimed before holding her close to him. Claudine smiled before the panicked feeling from earlier seemed to seep back into her. Yes, Henry was safe, and she was now safe, but that didn't change the fact that Freddie had been in Oregon. The one place she was supposed to be safe from him. How had he even gotten off the aisle? Claudine was sure that Mal would have made sure that there was no way Freddie could even look at the dogs. Not to mention the rats would have chased him off before he got into their territory. "Thank God you're safe," she muttered into his chest. She could wonder about Freddie later. She was with Henry. "Freddie, he's in Oregon. I couldn't stay. Not when he could be after me. I know I ran instead of fighting, but I just..."
Hey.
Henry said softly, stroking her hair as he continued to hold her close. Yes, it was rather alarming to hear that Freddie was in Oregon again, but Claudine didn't need him to rant and rave about her half-brother. She needed him to hold her close to him and reassure her that she was safe.
"No one's going to blame you for getting to safety when dealing with Freddie. But how do you even find out?"
Freddie didn't seem like the type of person to let Claudine go once she had found out that he was on the aisle after all. "Phil texted me. The brat's brother. I've been living with her family, or at Oregon Prep. God, Henry, I thought Freddie was going to kill me. I needed to be here. I needed to be with you."
"It's okay. I've got you,"
Henry said softly, continuing to rub her back, even as he ever so slightly tightened his grip on her. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Ryan come to relieve him for watch, and subtly shook his head.
"Please, mate. I know you're happy to see Claudine as well, plus Morgan and Brooke will be over the moon. But can I have her first?"
Thankfully, Ryan seemed to understand as he nodded slightly, after catching Henry's eye, and turned to go back to the crew quarters. "Sorry for almost knocking you over," Claudine said, almost burying her face into Henry's chest.
"It's okay. I'm just glad I recognized that it was you before I accidentally hurt you," Henry told her. "I love you too much to want to do that."
Claudine smiled at him as she looked up. "I love you too. There was no place I'd rather be, even if it's not the safest compared to Oridon. When I'm with you, I'm home."
"You'll always got a place here,"
Henry promised. Claudine gave him another smile before resting her head on his chest. "I know I'm about to sound prissy, but I'm so scared. This is the third time Freddy's been able to escape Oridon's clutches. Is this just going to be some mindless circle?"
Henry shook his head. "If I know Mal and Uma, they'll make sure this is the last time. For both Freddy and Audrey. Honestly, Mal's more likely to finish what she started at Cotillion than give Freddy a fourth chance."
Is it bad I don't feel sad for him? That I feel relieved?"
"No. It's completely understandable," Henry said, not wanting to bring up the fact that the rats would probably party to the break of dawn the day Freddy died.
"It'll be over," Claudine sighed. "We can finally be together. No more one of us being separated."
You waited for me?" Henry asked.
"Of course I did," Claudine told him, looking up at Henry with her eyes wide in shock. "Henry, I love you and only you. Of course I would have waited for you to come to Oridon. Besides, I made a promise to myself that I'd wait. I wasn't going to make you a hypocrite, even if we both knew this isn't a fling."
"I just thought there might have been someone in Oridon," Henry said softly. "Someone who can do more for you physically than I can. Like you said, Aurora and Philip have a son. A prince."
"There's too much of an age gap there, and in all honesty, it'd be like Mal dating Haddie," Claudine told him, having met the little godling while she was in Oridon. "You are the only one for me. I love you."
"I love you too,"
Henry said as the two of them shared a tender kiss.
"I missed you."
"I've missed you too," Claudine whispered to him, Henry's hand cupping her cheek as she leaned into his touch. Henry took a deep breath as he looked at her.
"I've got to be completely out of my mind, but in all honesty, it's now or never,"
he thought as his fingers brushed over the silver chain of the medallion his mother had given him before she died. It was probably the most cherished possession he had. And yet it was probably the only thing he could use if he was going to do this thing properly, so to speak.
"This is probably the most ill-timed and least romantic thing I've ever considered doing, but I don't care," he murmured. He took off his medallion and held it in his hands, dropping down on one knee. "Claudine, I love you. I know it's probably the worst time to ask this, but all I know is that I never want to be apart from you again. Marriage was never a thing on the Isle, but Mel's proven that a VK can get that happy ending all of Borodon gets. I completely understand if you slap me for this, but will you marry me?"
Claudine gasped. Henry had hardly ever taken off his medallion, and she knew how much his mother meant to him. She had been a low-tiered villain of the Isle. Not even a villain, technically, but thrown on the Isle regardless. For him to use the medallion!
"Okay, silence is never a good sign,"
Henry thought as he braced himself for a slap.
"Granted, I did just propose as she's frightened for her life. God help me, I should get more sleep."
"Yes!"
"Yes? You said yes,"
Henry reiterated, a megawatt grin growing across his face. "Of course I did!" Claudine exclaimed, throwing herself at him and wrapping her arms around his neck. Henry chuckled and toppled over, still on one knee. but wrapped his arms around Claudine as he brought her in for a hug.
I'll get you a ring at some point, I promise.
He whispered. I don't need a ring, Claudine said softly. I didn't say yes for a ring. I said yes for the guy asking.
Henry gave her a small smile. Well then, I want you to have this, he said as he put the medallion in her hands. So there's something of mine with you when you go back to Oridon. And I'll hopefully be right behind you once I get someone to replace me as acting captain.
Henry, isn't this... I can't take this.
I want you to have it, Henry said softly. I know my mother probably intended for it to get pawned away if I needed to get food after she... But I couldn't. It was the only thing I had of hers. And you're the only one I can think of giving it to.
He got up, not without difficulty as Claudine was still on him, and went to put it gently around her neck. Claudine gave him a small smile and pulled back her hair to help him.
It looks good on you,
Henry said, his voice soft as he gave her a small smile.
A lot better than it did on me.
It looked pretty good on you, Claudine said, giving him a kiss on the cheek. She couldn't help the few tears of delight that leaked from her eyes. Finally, she'd be able to be with Henry no matter what.
What's wrong? Henry asked, seeing the tears running down her cheeks. Did you want a ring? Was it a bad time? Should I not have asked the...
Shut it, Claudine said, kissing him gently on the lips. Henry smiled and quickly kissed her back. I'm happy, Henry, she said as they separated. More than you know.
Good,
Henry said, his lips only barely leaving hers.
I love you so much.
I love you too, Claudine said. We should stand up. Someone's going to be around to relieve you for watch. And if they've found us on the deck like this, well, it's probably not the best look, huh?
No, but who cares? Unless it's Brooke who comes to relieve me. None of the guys have the room to talk about how you're my fiancé now. So it's definitely not a fling, Henry murmured. But anyway, it's Ryan next, but I will agree on getting up. Let's get you to bed. You must be tired.
Claudine smiled as they got up, Henry gently holding her hands as he helped her to her feet.
Come on, we'll deal with Freddie in the morning,
he said, kissing the top of her head before looking over his shoulder.
And you can come out now, Rye.
All right, Ryan said as he walked up. Hey, Claudine. Congrats, mate. I may have been eavesdropping. And welcome back, Captainess. Thank you, Ryan, Claudine said with a small smile. I think Henry won't be the only VK boy joining me when I go back to Oridon. You've been on the Isle too long, Ryan. Besides, CJ misses you, she thought.
That's not a word, mate,
Henry chuckled. Semantics. You're our captain. She agreed to marry you. She's our captainess, Ryan said with a slight shrug, causing Claudine to giggle.
Yes, well, if you'll excuse me, I'd like to make sure my fiancé gets some sleep,
Henry said with a small smile. By all means, Ryan said as he passed them back to go on the deck.
Let me know if you see anything,
Henry told him as they made their way down to the crew's quarters. Roger that.
Good,
Henry nodded as he made his way into the crew's quarters. He meant what he said. He'd worry about Freddie in the morning. Claudine smiled as they sat down on Henry's mattress, Henry gently pulling her towards him and holding her in his arms. I've missed being here.
I've missed having you here,
Henry murmured, holding her close. Claudine nodded, curling up into him. Never better.
Good, Henry said, kissing the top of her head. Sure you don't want your jacket on?
I'm sure. If I get cold, I can just cuddle with you.
Henry chuckled. Get some sleep.
As long as you do the same, Claudine told him. Henry seemed almost dead on his feet when she had first seen him. But now, there was a spark back to him. I'm never leaving you again.
And I'm not leaving you again either, Henry whispered.
You never did.
I didn't go to Oridon.
You couldn't.
I could have. If I wanted to, Ryan and Derek are my seconds. They could have left the crew.
Claudine looked up at him. Henry, the crew's your family. I'm the girl you knew for a few years. I understood. Anyway, I'm glad you didn't come with me, because then you wouldn't be here right now to be with me. Henry smiled, kissing the top of her head once more. The two of them drifted off, Claudine feeling safe for the first time since getting Phil's text, and Henry feeling whole for the first time since Claudine had gone to Oridon. But life wasn't always good for the kids of the Isle. But for right now, Henry could have sworn that his life had always been perfect. It was as if he had his own personal bit of sun, and he wasn't going to let her go this time. End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that one. Oh my days, I loved that one. What a lovely chapter. Claudine and Henry are engaged. Yay! Romeo and Juliet getting their happy ending. I love that. And yeah, I don't blame her for being scared. As someone with anxiety issues, I understand the fight or flight response more than a lot of people I know. But sometimes you just need to get out. Just run, run, run. And you're terrified. And frankly, wanting to be with someone who made her feel safe, with Henry, completely understandable. Sometimes if my anxiety gets bad, and it's during the day, I go to my mum for a hug. Anyway, you guys know the drill. Like, comment and subscribe and hit that bell to get notified whenever I upload a new video. Have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye my guys, gals and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video. Take care.